Hello everybody, welcome back to the Protestant Education channel. Today we're going to be talking about Christians and psychology and kind of how to engage with it. In the current Christian space, I think there's a lot of too far on one side of anti-psychology speak, and then there is quite a bit of too far on the other side of pro-psychology speech. And I've seen a lot of comments and concerns with the rise of mental health awareness. Now, I am an autistic adult, and I would like to offer some of my own perspective into that. And take what I have to say with a grain of salt if you wish to. I want to kind of start off by qualifying what I just said. I have a clinical diagnosis for autism. What that specifically means is that earlier in my life, I was in a mental health facility and took a full profile test. If you don't know what that looks like, it usually involves, it usually takes about a week. You spend about 2-3 hours a week meeting with a psychiatrist. At least that's what I remember. Usually the test involves degrees of problem-solving skills, reading comprehension skills, and then they do a personal interview with you about your life and your feelings and all this stuff, and then they do an interview with your parents to help create a timeline and track, these behaviors to get a bigger picture. I don't really know how common a Rorschach is, so I didn't really want to include that in the description, but I did have to do one for my evaluation. All of that to say, this isn't one of those free online test things. And I also kind of want to start off by saying this is all my perspective. I understand that a lot of people would disagree with me. I think this is a topic that's very hard to talk about tactfully. And even as somebody who has autism, someone will be offended or bothered by something that you say about it. And, I'm not trying to say that now to be like, oh, obviously someone's going to get mad with me about this. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is these mental health things are very complex ordeals. What autism looks like to me and how it affects me on a day-to-day basis won't be the same way that it affects other people. And so again, this is really just my kind of perspective. So I want to kind of start off by saying there's more than one type of therapy. I've been going to therapy for a while. Sometimes when I was a kid, we had a little break for a little bit, and I currently go in my adult life. And sometimes I push back on my therapist, and I'm in the unique position where my therapist is young and is still kind of trying to figure out her style. But therapy in general should be a conversation between the patient and the therapist. I remember one time specifically talking to her about something that I felt was a call from God, and she said, well, it's up to you if you want to pursue that. And I kind of quickly corrected her and said, no, if this is a calling from God, I have to pursue it. That is how it works. That is my framework. That is how I think about it. And she was very respectful of that. Now, again, this is all my experience. I'm sure someone out there has some story of a therapist that maybe wasn't as nice about their beliefs, but that is my story with my therapist. And I'm saying all of this to kind of try to push forward that there are ways to work with psychology and Christianity as well. There's a lot of scholarship in psychologists, especially within the last 20 years, who are trying to find ways to connect mental health and Christianity and how we treat mental health, because we are called to provide health care, and this is a form of health care, to a certain extent. One of the big names in that is Andrew Sims, but he did a lot of scholarship on the idea of religious psychosis, which was a very big thing, kind of in the 90s or into the 2000s, that a lot of atheist psychology was very strong about, and he tried to be very intentional and clear in writing a definition for it that, people who subscribe to more Freudian ideas of psychology couldn't really argue with necessarily. he's kind of a big proponent of that it's a delusion if it acts like a delusion, in reference to religious delusion. And, I'm not saying he's 100% right. I'm not saying he's 100% wrong, but I'm saying that the work is being put in there and the conversations are being had. And I think to be just strictly anti-psychology really, I think is not helpful for people experiencing these mental issues and disorders. A lot of work has been done, especially since the 2000s, of medication, and we're really now kind of seeing the faults of that. And I'm not saying medication is bad, but I do think that with a lot of mental health stuff, psychiatrists have a tendency to push medication on people even beyond just people who may just need someone to talk to, a therapist, someone to bounce things off of, someone to kind of help work through certain things. Whatever they may be, it's different for each individual person. And my mother as well, she's been going to therapy for a while too, and she's a very devout Christian, and I don't want to get too specific about why she goes and what she does when she goes, because it's not really my place to say. I'm here to speak from my perspective, but it is helpful to her. And another thing that I haven't really said yet is that my therapist is also a Christian. She's a Catholic, but she is a Christian. And I think that also really helps a lot when it comes to us having our discussions. So I didn't really have a point for this video. I guess I was just kind of coming on here to offer a few thoughts and a couple of observations, and just basically just say, I think we do need to handle it with a lot of, I forgot. I talked about the anti-psychology side. Now I want to go a little bit into the super pro psychology side, because I do think there is a valid criticism there. So a lot of psychology really focuses in on the inner self, accepting a lot of what's inside and dealing with a lot of what's inside. And I guess, I was kind of expressing this concern to a therapist of mine, and she said, well, what's your opinion on that? And I guess, not to sound, I'm a Christian channel. I should sound too biblical sometimes, but I don't really want to look that deep into myself. I know what myself is capable of. I know how deeply wicked and sinful myself is. And so I guess I would rather look to Christ. And so that's why I kind of say, it is very helpful to have a Christian therapist who already really works from this frame of reference as well. But I wouldn't say it's necessarily mandatory. I've had a little bit of mixed experience with secular therapists, but the one I'm currently with, I think has done a really good job, and I don't want to just completely write off what she's doing and the work that she's putting in just because, God will take care of it. I'm not saying that God won't take care of it, but it's like the people who pray for miraculous healing and don't take someone to the hospital, Like if someone gets his arm chopped off, sorry for the very graphic example, but, applying a tourniquet and taking him to the hospital is probably the correct course of action from there, not getting on your hands and knees and praying. Now, if you have nothing else you can do, sure, get on your hands and knees and pray, absolutely. But if you're by a car and you're out in the woods and something goes wrong with an axe, again, sorry to use the very graphic example, but it is a real example. If someone's arm gets cut off, you should apply a tourniquet and you should take them to the hospital. If your child eats a bunch of, your toddler gets into the bottom cabinet of the sink and eats a bunch of cleaning supplies down there, you're not just going to get on your hands and knees and say, oh God, please don't let my child be poisoned. No, you're going to call poison control and take your child to the hospital. At least I would hope so. And so that's more so my point, that's really what I'm trying to get at, is that these are real concerns for people's health. And they do lead to negative consequences. And when we don't address those, we do, to a degree, kind of reinforce those negative consequences. But that's really all from me, I guess. I'm not trying to be out here being super polemical to everybody and say, well, you guys are all wrong and this is how you need to do it. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm more so trying to offer my perspective and just kind of how I think about it as somebody that does deal with these, this thing. There are things that are just going to be harder for me because I have autism, and that's just the reality. And I can dislike it, it's hard, but with therapy, with prayer, with all of these things put together, it's very helpful, and I have a very happy, fruitful life most of the time. Obviously we all stumble, we all have low seasons, but by and large, I'd say I'm doing pretty well. And I don't want people to just see a lot of anti-psychology Christians and just kind of instantly agree with that. I'd rather be here. I'd rather offer my own perspective for someone who maybe doesn't, for maybe someone who that doesn't really work for, kind of struggling to find a way to wrap up this video. But yeah, anyways, I guess that'll be it for now. You guys have a wonderful rest of your day. God bless you and all of your families. I hope to see you in the next video.